call this project Warm Heart Hope, and we call it Warm Heart Hope because Malawi is considered the warm heart of Africa. A very welcoming country, and then HOPE stands for Helping Others Prosper Education. Summer of 2012, I was invited with North Carolina A&T University to travel to Malawi for a service learning project. My background's in horticulture, so the goal was to work with a school garden while we were there. However, times were tough in Malawi. It's one of the poorest countries in the world, and there was concern that if we had a school garden, there would be theft by local villagers. So after months of planning the garden, once we arrived in country, was told that the school garden wouldn't happen. So therefore I'm in Malawi looking for something to do, and stumbled upon this project kind of by accident. So in Malawi, their native language is Chichewa or Longway or one of a few others, but once they get in school from 4th grade up, they're taught in English. So the challenge is students are learning in a language they don't speak at home. Their parents may never have learned English, but they're tested and taught in English. So there was a project called Literacy in Mother Tongue that was already taking place where professors from A&T were training those teachers in Malawi how to teach in their own mother tongue. And this project was kind of born out of that. Each afternoon, teachers from 3 different schools would come to Damasi Demonstration School where our group was housed to have this literacy mother tongue training. My goal at the beginning was just to sit in and observe and kind of learn. But I noticed that one of the instructors that was in the room was blind. So he was sitting there kind of struggling, trying to learn, but he didn't have anybody to assist him. So I stepped up and went and introduced myself and started sitting with him and helping him as we were going through this class. So if he needed something to be written, or if, I would work with him from that standpoint. And over the course of the next 3 weeks, Alan and I got to know each other pretty well. And towards the end of the experience, he asked if I could kind of meet him and have a conversation, and walked into the room having no idea what he was wanting to meet about. But he shared with me the story of Vain Hope, which was a story he wanted to use in his class. So we sat in a room for about 3 hours, and he dictated to me the story of Vain Hope as I wrote it in English, and then he dictated it letter by letter in Chichewa as I wrote that out. And then went back to the hotel that night and worked with some other folks from A&T, and we illustrated a big book version of Vain Hope. And initially I thought that's where the story was going to end. The next day I had the opportunity to help teach his class and share Vain Hope with his students. But I brought the project back here to ACC in our advertising graphic program. And a student at that point decided to illustrate it, and we sent it back to Malawi to be used in the classroom. He gave the students the books. Students were in tears, students were celebrating. For many of them, it was the first book they had ever received that was truly theirs. He was able to teach with that book. But the other thing that it spurred, which was really the unexpected part, was it got all the other instructors excited about literacy as well. So from that first book, that first year, we had 14 more teachers become authors and write their own stories. And the really neat thing about this is in Malawi, most of the textbooks were from Canada or from the US. So they're talking about things that our families would know and that our students would know, but in Malawi, life's different. Right? Most of them have no electricity. Most of them have never seen, outside of a 5-mile radius of where they live. So they don't understand the things that we do. So these stories are written by their teachers about their lives. So they talk about things like AIDS. They talk about poverty and hunger and dreams that are different than the dreams that might be in a traditional textbook. So it really allows those students to learn using stories that they know. It started as just an extra project for a student that was a high achiever that wanted to do something different. She had some free time, and so it really started there. We really realized that it fit pretty well with the curriculum in advertising and graphic design. So they were already doing client-based projects. They were doing illustrations, typesetting, so there was a lot of classes that were being taught that the skills needed to put together a book like this were being taught in. So we made the decision that as long as the project enhanced curriculum, that it was a project that was worth doing. And it gave the students a project that they could really do that made a difference. And the students each year had the option of whether this was a project they wanted to do or not. And when the impact was talked about and the previous students shared kind of what they had done, it was something the students really were excited about and wanted to do. So it's the difference between creating an illustration for a fake project versus creating an illustration for something that really is going to make a difference. And doing typesetting just for a project that's going to be used and turned in and nothing happens to it versus something that's going to be created and distributed across the country or across the world to students in Malawi and then used as an educational resource. So it truly did become an integral part of the curriculum and still is a part of the curriculum within advertising and graphic design.
So my book is called Learn from Experiences in Life, and it tells a story about this woman and her husband and how he went away to school and she supported him throughout his education. But while he was away, his eyes started to wander toward younger, prettier women that hadn't had children, and meanwhile she was at home keeping the children and taking care of their house. And he was going to leave her, and she convinced him to stay. And so the moral of the story was that they were happy together at the end. He stayed with her, and they had a happy life together. A lot of very difficult subjects, and it made a lot of them difficult to illustrate. The concepts and the things that we had to illustrate were not simple things and things that you normally think about a happy childhood. They all had morals. They were all very serious, and there were very few that were lighthearted or what we would think of for a child of that age in this country.
Very much like learning about different culture, and a lot of the first year students were shocked because we generally live in our little bubble of like, this is how the world is, but the world outside of the US is a lot different.
Tremendous amount of success. The students, I think, enjoy the project. I think they really get to think outside of just themselves, and they see how their work can make a difference somewhere else. We've sent over 2,000 books back to Malawi. We've had literacy rates in the school system have skyrocketed. Students are passing their 8th grade exams and being able to go into secondary school or high school, and a lot of it is because of this project. And it takes teachers that believe they can write and they learn that they can. And again, unfortunately, teachers in Malawi don't feel like they don't get the training that we do here, so they sometimes feel like they're less than. But I think this project's really showed that they're not, and then that combination of illustrations has made for something really spectacular.
These kids hold on to these books. They hold on to them for a long, long time. This is one of their most prized possessions. They probably color it in and read it over and over and over again. And I was touched by that. And I was like, if this means so much for those kids, then I need to do the best job I could possibly do.